Good afternoon, colleagues. Can I ask our logistic team to close the door so that we are more peaceful here to have a deep dive of the last session of the day, and I believe it's also last session across the food system forum. So in this session today, we wanted to tackle on the topic on value chain. Without further ado, I wanted to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Prasanna Bandupalli from CIMIC. He's the regional director for Asia, to give us set up a thing on what does it mean when we talk about value chain investment, agri-mechanization, and traceability. Please, Dr. Prasanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, friends. I know it's very tough to keep our concentration for a very last session in any conference, but let me give it a try in terms of highlighting my perspective on enablers for climate resilient value chains. Can you project the screen, please? Okay, what I will speak quickly is on integrated system enablers for climate resilient value chains. In my perspective, climate resilient agri-food systems and value chains have to encompass multiple angles. It's not only about climate resilient crop varieties and livestock breeds, but also functional, inclusive, nutritious, and biodiverse seed systems to take them to the farming communities, and climate smart water, soil, and nutrient management, and then scale appropriate pre and post harvest mechanization, digital tools and decision support systems. And all these things cannot work unless you have enabling policies and investments at various levels, at the country level, at the regional level. From that perspective, if you look at okay, I don't know whether it's working. Next slide, please. If you are listening to me, this doesn't work. Okay. So, reflecting that interconnectedness between climate risks, practices, technologies, and policies, this is what CIMIT and the Borlaug Institute for South Asia, which I represent, we tend to focus on a portfolio of climate adaptation options that cover not only crops but also livestock species. I will give some examples: high resolution risk profiles, location and context specific expert validated adaptation options, interactive and user friendly platforms co-developed with national partners in each of our target regions, and then provide use case guidance to the governments, to the agri-food actors, insurance agencies, banking, civil society, and the donors. And finally, open access with the downloadable data, codes, and scripts. All these things need to be, if you are looking at value chains, climate resilient value chains, need to be put in place. Let me also begin, because I'm a geneticist and breeder in the first place. To me, a climate resilient agri-food systems cannot be built without these genetic innovations. Already CGIR contributes tremendously to this particular area of work, together with an array of national partners, private sector partners too, across the global south, be it the flood tolerant rice or salinity tolerant rice from Erie, or the heat tolerant chickpea from ICRISAT and ICARDA, the drought-tolerant maize, which I have led for almost 15 years at CIMIT as Director of Global Maize Program, the heat-tolerant maize for Asia with improved water use efficiency, waterlogging tolerant maize, which is particularly relevant in the northeastern part of India as well as many countries across Southeast Asia, and most importantly, again, terminal heat stress tolerant wheat. So seed that combines these important packages of traits together with the disease and insect pest resistance forms the foundation for climate resilient value chains. In BISA, the Borlaug Institute for South Asia, which is an institution set up by CIMIT, we are also implementing a project on Atlas for climate adaptation in South Asian agriculture. It's called ACASA, to be very short, which provides a kind of a digital platform for informed decision making. It strengthens the quality, accessibility, and usability of data and evidence to support climate informed decision making. So one of the digital platform's activity is to analyze the climate risks, assess the climate change impacts on 17 different crops and 5 different livestock species, and a portfolio of adaptation options across these crops and livestock. And these outputs are put in a web-based platform called an adaptation atlas. And the users are a varied number of use cases we have. And this particular platform is developed, co-developed together with partners in India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And this is something that we need to scale up across countries in sub-Saharan Africa as well as in Southeast Asia. Besides that, there is also climate smart advisories. That is, first application is using this SCFs or subseasons forecast using ACASA data platform and crop simulation models to derive actionable advisories. And the second application is heat stress advisories for livestock in India using heuristic and databases of ACASA. So these are two critical applications that come out of ACASA's work, which is supported by the Gates Foundation at present. We also have a data ecosystem for crop loss assessment in the ACASA platform, especially using early warning systems for crop insurance. We collaborate with the Indian Meteorological Department and work together with the Government of India in generating these loss assessment models. And a lot of work has been done on ACASA using high resolution data and crop loss assessment monitoring tool. So this is something that is going to enable next generation bundled weather insurance in the next few years by coordination with various agencies. So ultimately, what does this serve? Right from government, civil society, and NGOs, to credit and finance institutions, to insurance industry, to the donors across multiple countries. Look at this: India in different ministries of agriculture, IMD and the Department of Agriculture in Sri Lanka, or Heifer International in Nepal, or BRAC in Bangladesh, NABARD in India, or Bangladesh Bank, which is also using these platforms, Salico in case of Nepal, or Shema in Nepal for insurance industries. And again, the Gates Foundation also uses these insights for their adaptation investment. So to me, these use cases that are based on real data is really critical for enabling climate smart investments. Coming to scale appropriate mechanization, Tim Krupnik sitting there at the back is the one who really led this fantastic work in CIMIT through the CISA as well as through various other projects in Bangladesh, in Nepal. And this is indeed critical to get to the models for mechanization, what sort of service models we can utilize, what works, what does not work, and what from India can go into niche markets in Bangladesh, Nepal, and Cambodia, or from China, no-till models that are relevant for upland systems in Lao PDR. So this is again an ASEAN CGIAR project that enabled this kind of work. Again, the practical utility of all this is again implementing a large-scale climate resilient for agriculture project we do in 2 different states in India, one in Bihar, another in Madhya Pradesh. The CRA Madhya Pradesh project intensively promotes those mechanized solutions right from zero till to happy seeder, because believe it or not, Madhya Pradesh is the state with the largest number of crop burning events at present in India. Not even Punjab or Delhi, but Madhya Pradesh. So that's where the farmers are not having solutions before. So since the last 2 years, we are implementing this model project in 9 different districts in Madhya Pradesh, promoting extensively diversification of cropping systems, scale appropriate mechanization in a state that is extremely important, not just for rice and wheat, but also for grain legume production. And the result of all this zero tillage system is implemented now in more than 80% of the wheat sowing area in the CRA Madhya Pradesh districts, the 9 districts. The crop diversification, especially through zero tillage system, has facilitated 30% expansion in area under diversified cropping systems. And the new farm machinery is enhancing field efficiency, reduced labor and input costs, promoted precision in sowing and spraying operations. So this has changed the game significantly. Again, through the project, we provided those happy seeders to different cooperatives formed in 9 different districts, and those cooperatives then scale it out to thousands of farmers in those districts. And that system has worked quite well, those service system. So the sustainability and efficiency of all these custom hiring centers and machinery service providers in Nepal, there is an excellent paper. Again, Tim is there sitting. This paper is published in a book recently published by the Asian Development Institute, and showcases what are the different options, the design cases that we have, and the service models, what are those regional lessons across each of those 4 countries, Thailand, Cambodia, India, and Korea, with regard to mechanization services, and how do we operate this with a framework, with coordination between the lead institutions and a number of locally important institutions that can implement this kind of model. This is this beautiful book. I had a pleasure of reading this over the last 2 weeks on transforming smallholder agriculture through mechanization in Asia. And one of the authors, the editors rather, Dil Raut, was our former CIMIT socioeconomist who worked in many countries, including in Mexico. So this is an excellent volume on pathways and policies for mechanization, smallholder agriculture through scale appropriate mechanization. What are the key takeaways for policy action based on this experience that we have from different countries in South and Southeast Asia? We have to move beyond one size that fits all. Efficiency isn't about having a greater number of machines, but it's having the right ones at the right place for the right purpose. We have to support not only cooperatives and custom hiring centers, which are vital, but also individual innovations, individual entrepreneurships need to be fostered. We have to also prioritize the after-sales ecosystem, especially as we go through in interviews with many farmers. They also complain about lack of enough number of machines, also lack of after-sales services or even spare parts. So how do we strengthen that after-sales ecosystem is another important challenge that we need to address, besides digitizing the transactions and investing in training of a number of stakeholders on multiple aspects of mechanization. Capacity building of the farmers and the extension personnel on all these various aspects related to value chain is very critical, right from conservation and regenerative agriculture, digital agriculture, renewable energy-based irrigation systems. This is a solar power-based irrigation system that we have at 2 of our BISA research stations, one at Pusa, Bihar, another at Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh, which serve as platforms for training farmers as well as extension personnel. Mechanization, this is again a BISA photograph showing a range of machinery, what we use in each of these farms. Research stations have almost 500 hectares of excellent facilities. So they serve as capacity building hubs for a range of genetic innovations as well as mechanization and renewable energy-based irrigation systems. So in summary, building climate resilience requires an integrated approach, including scaling of proven technologies and digital tools and platforms like Akasa, and better coordination across institutional and geopolitical boundaries. The second most important thing, we need to innovate, protect, and scale up. That innovate, protect, scale up can only be done by strengthening cropping systems diversifications as well as technological innovations, infrastructure and R&D investments in appropriate areas, fostering collaborative ecosystems, adoption of appropriate standards, rigorous monitoring, evaluation, learning, and transparency in our dealings with various stakeholders, sustainable and circular practices, and finally, a rigorous risk assessment and capacity building. And through that, I'm sure that we can strengthen much better climate resilient value chains through integrated systems. Thank you so much.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Prasanna, for highlighting integrated approach is required for climate resilient value chain. We have now heard the story and the theory and the overall landscape. With that, we are going to have a panel discussion to actually bring the best practice and the lessons learned from the ground. So let me invite our moderator, Mr. Takashi Uda, Director of AFNR from ADB. He's also the champion of agricultural value chain within the bank.
Good afternoon. I can see people who are interested in agriculture value chain. Thank you for being here. Yes, it's true. I mean, when the world is still new, when I joined in ADB like 18 years ago, yeah, this value chain things are already starting in ADB. And I can see the kind of rotation of all like initiatives in different countries. So, okay, I want to invite the panelists. Can I ask Jonathan Newby, Dr. Jonathan Newby, Alliance Biodiversity, CIAT. Yeah. Thank you, please. Yeah. And also my colleague, Christian Rotera, from India Resident Mission, Asian Development Bank. And Jilin, Senior Climate Change Officer, Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department, ADB. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, sorry, yeah. So may I again invite Dr. Podupali? Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so let me start a question to you, Dr. Newby. You help to integrate sustainable CASA value chains into ADB lending in Lao PDR. Can you share a simple example how research on the ground helped shape the ADB loan design? And what changes were made or need to be made to make the project more practical and sustainable?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question and the invitation to be here. In terms of what helped to get this into a loan, there's 3 points I wanted to make. First was the approach, second is the evidence, and third is the partnership. So I've got a few pictures to be behind me as I talk around that. From the outset, I'm an economist who was in charge of a commodity program within the CGIAR. So the approach that we were able to take was to look at this across scales rather than coming from the genetics and the cropping system level from the start. We tried to come at this by understanding the context first and then look at the problem. So I'm not sure if the presentation is going to come up behind me, but I'll keep talking until it does. So it was really important to understand the context, the global markets, and where cassava value chains in Southeast Asia fit within that. So to take that global perspective and then come down to understanding the local value chains. So I'm going to... Yeah, okay. So we'll skip that. So to have an integrated team that could work and look first at what are these global dynamics and what does that mean for local policies and value chains? What does that value chain structure look like? What do household livelihoods look like? There's no cassava farmers, there's farmers that grow cassava, and understanding the role that cassava played in that livelihood. And then you get down to the crop level, experimentation, looking at improved genetics. But by understanding first that scale at your diagnostics phase, we already know who's in the context, who's in the value chain that has an incentive to scale this. So that was the first step that was really important. We could start to work with private sector because we involved them in the diagnostic. They walked the chain with us to understand. The second point is the evidence. So starting on, you have to convince governments that this is worth taking a loan for. So I've just shown there the increasing exports of cassava from Laos, $650 million US exported in 2025. This is a significant economic contribution to the government. It's the third or fourth biggest export after electricity, gold, copper, and then you have cassava. So at the national level, it's important, but it's not one big farm, it's thousands of smallholder farmers delivering to a processing sector that's connected to a global market. So communicating that it's big at a national scale, but it's also very important for livelihoods. And not only livelihoods, but it's the poorest households in upland communities that are growing this crop and are making significant income, and it's a major contribution to their cash income. And to be able to provide that evidence, of course, it's always great to look at where that cash income's going to and what are the actual benefits, and that's work that still needs to happen. But by understanding this context and bringing people along the chain, we could already look at how interventions fitted. And in different countries, we had this across countries to say, in this context, yes, you can work with the private sector. In this context, no, you need a public-private partnership. And in this context, no, you need public investment. This part of the problem is a public problem. And you could do that and start to set up your demonstrations where you had productive opportunities and bringing farmers into that. And you can see the numbers above the heads of the farmers in that photo. That's how many Facebook followers those people have. So I have a few friends. That farmer has 18,000 people and he posts on his cassava production all the time. So if I get him to post something around sustainable production, I have far bigger reach than me talking to people in this room. So then starting to do that experimentation and showing the economics at the farm scale, what is the return on investment, what is the return to labour, which is also always very important in terms of adoption. And that's been really critical to show when the consultants from ADB come, okay, this is the benefits for the economy, this is the benefits for the value chain, this is the benefits from the farmer. In terms of changes we had to make, it's really to focus on the process and the partnerships rather than the individual technologies. So if we want to talk about sustainability, we need to be solving future problems, not the problems of yesterday. So we really tried to make sure we were setting up partnerships and processes rather than saying, this is the technology that we're scaling. I think in one of the threats and is that we can continue to bring in those resources to scale, which is very important, and to try and bring the private sector into scaling, a new variety and to get them at that last stage. But we still rely on a lot of investment to come in to address the future challenges. And at current, as we know, for Southeast Asia, particularly traditional donors are reducing. So we need a way to bring the private sector not only to deliver, but also to contribute to solving the future problems. And that's the challenge for us in the future, because we have many new threats. This is a fungus that's spreading through the region at the moment. On the right is a variety we've just released for a virus. Looks beautiful. That's 10 meters away, those two photos. But unfortunately, that variety is very susceptible to the fungus. So we can scale something for yesterday's problem, but unless we link the scaling that we're doing with the private sector to ongoing innovation, I think in a few years we won't have a sustainable solution, because we're no longer solving problems that farmers and industry are facing.
Thank you very much. Is it okay for me to ask a question? Okay, so, okay. I mean, just looking at it, I mean, just taking advantage of, I saw, this significant increase of cassava export, right? And an impressive thing is, I mean, proportion of this starch increased more than, this primary processed, So how did it make it happen? Because it's often developing member countries, they have difficulty even making starch out of cassava. So in those countries, many countries, they just do very preliminary one, not starch level. So how?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, and Cambodia to Laos the great example. But I think this is where, from an ADB perspective, it's the investment in infrastructure, and not just ADB, but we have a new railway going to China, connecting there. We have much improved infrastructure in terms of road. You have access to electricity that gives reliability of supply for a processor. You have working with government around investment policies. So creating that environment that leads to investment in processing has been important to see that next level investment come. And I think hopefully as we start to see capital become available, you start to see the next level of processing come, the going from into the next products, into the food products, into the industrial products that you continue to add value. But it's some of it's freight protection. The Mekongs are sometimes your friends, but creating that enabling environment, the reducing sovereign risk for an investor is an important part that you can't breed your way out of.
Thank you so much. I mean, great engagement of private sector is also very impressive. Yeah, thank you. Next question to Jilin. You have been closely involved in designing climate resilient and low carbon value chains. Can you share some concrete examples about your work in Mongolia? I'm particularly interested in how you are integrated sustainable grassland management with policy interventions, drawing lessons from other countries like China. How are you addressing financial access for women-led SMEs? And what role do you see for carbon markets in enhancing the bankability of livestock investments?
Well, thank you. I don't have slides, so I guess I will just, by narrative, setting a background as to Mongolia. Mongolia is actually a very different country. It sits in the intersection of grassland, livelihoods, and then climate change. Still has the world's most intact temperate grassland, and over 80% of its land area is actually covered by grassland. So you can imagine the economy is actually, particularly the livelihoods, are very much dependent on these grassland ecosystems. And in fact, I think the grassland in Mongolia supports about over 2/3, much more of these livelihoods based on pastoral grassland ecosystems. But also, in the same time, over decades of overgrazing problems, Mongolia's grassland degradation has been very much serious. And also it's compounded by very much climate impacts. The zoot in the winter causes deaths of hundreds, thousands of animals, livestock in the winter. So it's a very unique country, and it's actually also the underlying issue is structure problems. Much of Mongolia's livestock sector remains still very much volume driven. So because there's a weak market incentives and limited value addition. So when disaster comes and then livestock dies, herdmen just rationally increase their herding groups, herding amount to increase their livelihoods, trying to increase their livelihoods. So it's sort of a vicious circle in this process and needs, of course, a systematic solutions to address this challenge. We're still exploring, but I guess ADB in the past couple of years has been investing a lot in Mongolia's agriculture and livestock sector. And this is actually through very much cooperation with the private sector in Mongolia. One pillar of our work is actually to, through a financial intermediation loans to Bank, which is Mongolia's largest bank with extensive reaches to rural areas. And so through such a financial intermediary approach, we be able to access the reach out to small-scale farmers, processors, SMEs, etc., and to provide chronic finance to these smallholders along the supply chain to increase their financial resilience. Another more targeted example is actually through working with the Gobi Cashmere Group, which is the biggest cashmere producer, processor, and also exporter in Mongolia. And then the unique part of this collaboration is that we not only provide a private sector loan, we provide a loan of $30 million to the company, but also accompany that with a technical assistance, specifically to support the resilience actions, sustainable practices of herdsman communities supplying cashmeres to the company to increase their resilience capacity, financial literacy, and the ability to actually forming herdsman cooperatives so that they can better having a buffer to some of these disasters or risks from the climate change and other issues. And then we also realized that this is still very much small scale efforts working with individual companies and banks. And so one effort very recently that we have been initiating is to working with the government of Mongolia to develop a carbon market, because grassland obviously has a lot of carbon potentials in their sequestration. And so we are providing support to assessing grassland methodologies capable to Mongolia's grassland ecosystems, and also working with the government to provide a dedicated carbon finance governance structure, the provisions in their upcoming climate change law, and also to polish the design of the carbon registry and how, especially the benefits sharing mechanisms as to how smallholders can be participated and benefited from these carbon market operations. And so these are some of the recent developments that we have been trying to do, so that with all these herdsmen sort of carrying out grassland restoration efforts, they can also get benefited and financially get financial incentives from these practices, so that we can break these vicious circles and promote very much sustainable grassland management practices among the herdsman community. And so also in this process, we have been bringing sort of high-level Mongolian delegations to China as well last year, just to see how stable large-scale government finance is needed in terms of grassland restoration, and how some of these digital technologies that has been adopted in China, such as crowdfunding or crowd finance to conservation efforts, can be replicated or learned by Mongolian stakeholders. So this is still sort of a collective efforts, and we're still exploring. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jilin. Yeah. Okay. I was actually involved in this project for first 10 years. And yeah, so a bit of stories. Mongolian government requested us to support this processing capacity improvement, because raw material, like it's very hard to grow animal, and they cut creeper. Then those cashmere fur, mostly bought by China and processed as yarn, and then make nice sweater with the logo of China. So Mongolian, herders or government really requested, we want to sell more our cashmere, cashmere sweater with our own cashmere. So ADB support has grown. We are doing this pasture management as well, supporting, but now private sector is coming in. So those which we supported in small way became bigger and got the private sector financing. So I think it's very nice story of adding value chain, processing, value addition, then creating jobs. At the same time, try to make it inclusive, these herders. So we don't just give loan to these SMEs. We give loan with nice strategy, engaging farmers. So yeah, those are the things. It's a bit not off from climate smart, but okay. So now my question is to Dr. Podpali. Yeah. Okay. So okay, you have overseen the scaling of seed value chains across multiple countries. Yeah. In your experience, what is the best way to move improved seeds from research stations to millions of farmers? How did you involve the private sector in that process?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. When I served as the maize program director at CIMMYT, I was based in Nairobi for 15 years. Implemented this project called Drought Tolerant Maize for Africa in 13 African countries. In 2010, when I joined, those varieties from CGIR background were not occupying more than 0.5 million hectares. By 2024, we reached 8.5 million hectares in 13 years. How did that transformation, the largest scaling of climate resilient maize happened in Africa? The answer is simple: extensive public-private partnerships. Partnerships with over 100 seed companies in Africa through innovative licensing models of our hybrids enable them to access that improved genetics and invest in massive scaling and reach out to the farmers. I wish such sort of replication of success of climate resilient seed can be done also in Asia. In South Asia, comparison to Africa, it's still a long way to go. To me, for example, heat-tolerant maize hybrids from CIMMYT in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan have reached today not more than 800,000 farmers. But the need is to go all the way up to 15 to 20 million hectares if you have to achieve climate resilience. So Asia has a highly heterogeneous seed systems, not only in maize, but in many crops. What is applicable in India through private sector is not particularly usable in other countries, some other countries. In Bhutan, we are scaling up a heat-tolerant maize hybrid called Venkar Hybrid 1. And that is being done through community-based hybrid seed production. Fantastic. Started 2 years back, and the ARDC of Bhutan is doing that. In Nepal, on the other hand, there were seed companies, small seed cooperatives established by women farmers in the hill areas of Nepal. And these cooperatives have now, some of them have transformed into seed companies. That's one of the big successes, how those cooperatives, women-led cooperatives, can transform into commercial seed businesses. To me, therefore, again, there is no one size that fits all. We need to identify, understand which particular seed systems are most inclusive, functional, and sustainable, and adopt those pathways for success.
Yeah, my question is, you said this extensive private-public partnership in seed replication or expansion was quite successful, right? But Asia is not yet that. Is it because of heterogeneity, or is it because of kind of, some kind of lack of enabling environment for private sector to come in, or any legal, or what is hindering?
I think in some of the countries, the system, the private sector, in India, of course, there is a large thriving seed sector with a large number of players, small, medium, large seed companies producing massive quantities of hybrid seed, for example, in crops like maize or wheat, varietal replacement. You will be surprised to know that within 3 to 4 years, improved varieties are replacing the older ones so fast. And that kind of a strong varietal replacement is not seen in many other crops and in many other countries. So that systems needs to be set up in countries. The infusion of private sector, transforming the cooperatives into seed companies, nurturing them, providing them necessary investments to initial phases require investment. That's where the banking systems can help to foster those small seed entities to, once they reach 1,000 tons, they'll be sustained by themselves. But initial phase needs to be fostered, and then they will take off. And that's what happened in Africa, thanks to African Development Bank support, and thanks to many other investments through USAID, through Gates Foundation, seed companies flourished. And everywhere, if maize is not sold, a seed company cannot sustain in Eastern and Southern Africa, period. So the genetics that came from CIMMYT, which is royalty-free, no charge, nothing, has solved half their problems. They don't need to invest in technology development. They can straight away go to markets by scaling up and reaching the seed. So that's the important advantage of CG systems, because we are not for profit and can provide these genetics royalty-free to multiple players.
Okay. Just one point to CG, right? I mean, it's highly qualified, research institutes, which I understand. But for instance, I mean, you are showing this heat-tolerant corn variety, or what's economic value of expanding this much, so that I mean, we can pitch into those who decide how to allocate national budget. Yeah,
India is, for example, putting a lot of investment in maize. Maize is a crop which has got perhaps the highest cumulative annual CAGR rate of almost 6 to 7%. That's because of the demand not only from the feed industry, but also now the recent 80-20 policy of the government of India to have substitution of bioethanol. So the bioethanol strategy has triggered a wave of investment from the private sector. So these are multiple drivers that are happening. There is a strong rising demand for crop like maize in countries like India. So what it does is, for example, is climate resilience is so important because in the Kharif system or in the monsoon system, most of the commercial hybrids are vulnerable. They are drought prone and they are also heat susceptible. And what these genetics have done is to, where they are harvesting 3 tons per hectare, you can go up to 5 tons per hectare. So that makes a huge jump in terms of bridging the productivity gap and catering to the market demand.
Thank you. So, question to my colleague Christian. You can cover 2 projects. Okay, so first question is, your team is implementing the Himachal Pradesh horticulture project, right? From the government's perspective, you are not government, but in the shoes of government, what worked well in rolling out irrigation and value addition facilities at scale, especially bringing together 2 departments to work in the same clusters? And what would you do differently if you have another project to do?
Thank you. So I'm standing in place of the secretary who had to go back, and also standing with Dennis and Sune, who are our project team members. And I think because Jonathan, you painted the pictures, I have to paint a little bit of picture now. So you imagine that subtropical area of Himachal Pradesh, where people are migrating towards the plains, land left fallow. There is hardly any irrigation because people cannot invest in that. And top of that, when you grow something, you get monkeys or you get other stray animals. Within that, you see people in the temperate area who have been doing apple for a long time. Their income is 100 times more than yours. What is their aspiration? So these are the aspirations of people in that area who wanted to do something of value. And that was the horticulture which they had in mind. On the other side, you had also infrastructure department like the irrigation, which is looking at doubling farmers' income as the key policy initiative at the time. So we had 2 different departments sending us 2 different PPRs and telling us that they will do the same thing, that means increase farmers' income. But one, when we asked, how will you do it? They said they can put sandalwood, for example, that kind of value. So it's the economist perspective, that how do you increase the value? The other one, when we asked, is, okay, you need irrigation. How are you going to do irrigation? Because you don't have a single engineer in a department, so how to do that? And that's where ADB, we decided saying that why shouldn't these 2 departments work together with the same set of farmers? And that's where the whole cluster approach came in place. That's where we also wanted to understand what kind of irrigation structures would work here, because you required everywhere a lift irrigation to bring water from someplace or the other, and you needed structures which will be more crop demand oriented. So we had to understand shifting of the crop, what kind of demand would be there, and based on that work on this. So we started with 200 hectare. It worked well at 200 hectare. We could experiment with different kind of structures, how the systems will work. We experimented with different kind of fencing so that the animal protection could be done. Overall, since the government was in a hurry to go large scale immediately, so they started to do the initial design, which was based on many times faith also, and saying that, okay, farmers have agreed, this is the land they will give, this is the water here. So we started with that design. So design was done in a bit of a hurry. And that's where we had to kind of redo at the time of implementation so many of the designs. But at the end of the day, it definitely has proven the point that 2 departments have to work together. One cannot do it alone. And you have to make sure that irrigation comes as a service to farmer. At the same time, horticulture delivers the value based on that. So that has been working well. Now we had done 4,000 hectares of the initial implementation is on the way, where we have also seen that delays in implementation would lead for farmer to step off the project sometimes. But at the same time, to 2,000 hectares, we really want to push everyone to look at the design seriously at the time of design itself, so the implementation is faster. So what we would do differently next time in any of these projects is to pay more attention to the water availability data. That's the most important part. Second is to look at the locations very clearly as to from where the design would deliver the best value for money, because we had some areas which had the vertical gravity driven work possible, but the design was not complete at the time. So some of those things definitely can be done with respect to more investment in creation of data. And then ensuring that the design is a continuous process, not one-off process. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, I think this is one of the things that, Asian Development Bank or even FAO development partners can do, bringing in different ministries or different departments and work together. That's sometimes hard to happen. I mean, when just government-driven projects, they may call for convergence, but it's actually hard. But in our projects, we do very often. So that's something we can catalyze. Yeah. So another question to Christian. This question is about Magnet. Magnet is called Maharashtra Agribusiness Network, right? So this does kind of value chain connecting farmers, organization with value chain operators, those who do processing or those who are trading. So this has been quite successful, and one of the kind of flagship project in India of ADB, among ADB projects. So from your experience, what are the main challenges to make cold storage facilities profitable? Have you seen any innovative models like public-private partnership or farmer collectives that successfully address these challenges?
Thank you. So this is also a loaded question for the project in a way that we had tried to answer this question as to how to do it better. And this also builds on top of the earlier attempts where we're trying to see as to how private sector can completely transform the overall post-harvest cold chain process. We had a lot of faith that they will come and invest if we give them enough incentive. And in India, there have been also many schemes from Ministry of Food Processing, etc., who tried to incentivize this cold chain process. A lot of facilities were also created, but none of them led to a value chain kind of impact. That's what we had seen. So overall, what we have understood is that in any cold chain process, seasonality is the key issue. If you're going to do a single crop and you're going to store it, let's say for 1 month, how do you look at justification of a large size of facility? Second is the sizing of that facility as to how do you decide what size is going to be suitable. So in earlier projects, because they were driven by a certain cost category mechanism, people are doing to get the maximum size possible without looking as to what is the availability of fruit in that particular area. So these two definitely are the key consideration as to you understand what you have available. You try to see as to how multi-crop kind of mechanism can be brought. Third, understanding your crop. Not all of your crop has to go into cold chain. Not all of your crop has to reduce the temperature from let's say field heat to 0 degrees centigrade immediately. Sometimes it is there for the pre-cooling, etc. Not all of them has to stay in a cold chain for a certain number of months. Apple, it works out well. CS storage gives you a lot of value. Now people are trying that in the onion also. So understanding the post-harvest treatment of the produce, understanding its requirement, these three things are very important. Now, how the project tried to do this is to bring two different set of interventions. One intervention is to see as to how the farmer collectives and the value chain operators were ready to invest in what kind of product and give them a certain facility to increase the size based on what their requirements were, helping them to create correct kind of detailed project report based on those two considerations which you mentioned. Third is to look at those common facilities can be developed from the public sector side, but operation of that to be given to the users, the private sector side, so that they can provide the facility to people. So it has an element of de-risking with respect to capital to a certain extent, but the O&M, the operation and management part, service delivery from the private sector side. This is so far what we understand the best in the project. Beyond that, I do not know many other models. Maybe other countries will have a better model, but given that India is a smallholder farmer country, this seems to be the best model at the moment.
Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, it's very true. I mean, cold chain cost, of course, much more non-cold chain. So it has to have enough value and enough market value to put that investment, which has to be recovered somehow by selling products. Okay, so a little more, yeah. Okay, so 3 minutes each. I mean, just final question. Based on your experience, what is the single most important factor that determines whether an investment in irrigation, mechanization, or logistics moves from a successful pilot to a scalable, bankable program? Yeah, that's the question. Most important factor for basically upscaling from pilot level.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a value chain perspective, understanding the context and the incentive structure, you can't replicate a successful model from one location to another location without understanding the basics. So for example, in Cambodia, that example, right? We have Cambodia with 800,000 hectares of cassava, and nearly all of it comes through into Vietnam for processing into starch. Because in the one province connected to Cambodia, there's 50 large starch factories depending on that crop, and they need that crop, and they will pay for that crop. So the price in eastern Cambodia today is $110 a ton. In western Cambodia, it's $65 a ton. But you can go a long way and transport there. So if I'm a factory to try and invest in Cambodia, I have to compete with a very efficient processing sector in Vietnam. So understanding that context is important. And then coming back to the technologies, for cassava, we have a challenge that it's vegetatively propagated. It's very difficult for a private sector to invest in early generation because they can't capture necessarily the benefits. So understanding the role of the public sector, don't understand that the delivery end, there is this business case and that we need to foster these small entrepreneurs, but it's based on an investment in the public sector. So when we're developing a loan through the Ministry of Commerce for the delivery, we need to make sure there's matching support for the public sector. Otherwise, again, we have this delivery machine without the innovation coming through. So understanding the context, understanding the incentives, I think is always important. Understanding the context of the technology, the livelihood and the farming system, and the value chain structure, and where do all those three align to make a bankable investment.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Jilin. Yeah.
Yeah, I will agree on the incentive side, especially, I guess, to you frankly, if we want to really scale up all the actions, every sector on the supply chain needs to earn money. It's very basic information on that end. But in addition to that, I guess there's also need to be more strengthened coordination and understanding among the actors along the supply chain on these sort of issues and challenges that each sections are facing. Especially when we're talking about cross-border supply chains, there are different buyers, and sometimes the export destination country or the buyers of the consumption market also plays a role in recognizing the importance of a sustainable production and also the responsible supply chain along the line. So it is also important to some extent also to have that information or transparency on that end. So I think that's also very important and as to who can pay the premium to ensure that herders or smallholders get the most benefits from these good practices.
So I think what both of them have said, apart from that, I think the key of the value chain intervention lies in value. What is the value? Where the value can be delivered or not. If you're not looking at that, and that's where the market comes into picture. We have to see as to there is a market demand for it, whether there's a value that can be delivered to farmer, and then sustained efforts, because every value chain you're starting from zero when most of the time you're introducing new value chain. And if you do not give that sustained support to it, it might die. So these, I think, three things, and of course the resilience. You build that resilience into the picture, because any value chain initially looks good. I mean, UP, Mentha, you know the story. Everywhere, maize, new story. 80-20 it happened, but now suddenly government is saying that they are not going to buy. All the maize farmers are sitting on maize. So this can happen to any of the value chains. So resilience part of it has to be there. Third is this whole mixing of crops is very much important. The single crop dependency is, again, as a seasonality issue. Those things are coming into picture. So even now, new cluster development program and government, etc., we are looking at multi-crop kind of clusters. So I think these are a few things which I think there. And of course, the capability of farmer. So we all dream the farmer will become businessman. You have to invest in it. Without that, it won't work.
To me, two things are important. One, context-specific and profitable models. There is no one size that fits all. For example, seed is a different monster, machinery is a different aspect. So what works well for one may not work for others. So we need to evolve, validate, design, validate, and then deploy those models and take the lessons from it. And behind all strategic partnerships, if you don't have the partners, right partners to scale any technology, then it will just remain a pilot. So to me, that strategic partnerships and implementing context-specific and profitable models through a systems lens is very key.
Thank you very much. Can I bring you in? I mean, if you have any questions or any comments, please feel free. Yeah, Kathy.
Well, thank you, panelists, for their great sharing from different countries, even the practice from African. So can I ask 3 questions? I have 3 questions. So my first question to...
Those questions which you already told us.
Unfortunately, those are new questions and challenging ones. So my first question to Juno, I was actually in Laos twice 2 years ago. When I discussed with the forestry people, so they have a concern that large production of cassava will lead to deforestation. And meanwhile, a lot of cassava has been used by bubble tea, which is, the producers, which is not that healthy for the consumers. So what's your intake for balance the cassava production, while meanwhile the health of the consumers and also deforestation issue? Should I carry on my questions? Or yeah, the second to Prasam, thank you again for bringing the experience from African continent. Again, I was in Berlin since I got this job. So it was amazed to see how many seeds complaints come into, particularly by the tart clearing house. So I wanted to understand, given your stay in African continent, in terms of seeds development, will the African Development Bank invest? If you can have concrete investment areas, that would be really appreciated. My third question is to ADB colleagues. So if we hear from CG colleagues, no matter cassava or wheat, they all start from breeding. That's a part of technology. It's actually one of the large portfolio of CGI-AR. But when I discuss with different project team leaders, it seems the appetite from the government on investing in breeding or different genetic technologies are not much there. So I'm just curious how I mean why? Yeah. So back to you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kathy. And I think it's been one of the greatest challenges to get support to develop a sustainable cassava investment is that the first thing, there's a lot of information and misinformation around the crop. And so I spend a lot of time trying to talk to people about what's a driver and what's a vehicle. So deforestation is happening. Laos is at the extensive margin previously of cassava production, and we saw Thailand, then Vietnam, then Cambodia and Laos. And global markets are increasing. Demand as incomes rise in Asia increase, so people demand more animal feed, more processed frozen foods where the starches are going into, more paper. Paper is one of the biggest user of cassava starch, more textiles. So there's all these applications that incomes are rising and we have this demand. When I started having the conversation with people about investing in sustainable cassava production was the 10 years ago at the bottom of the line, and people said, we don't want to invest in cassava. I said, well, farmers are going to continue to grow it, whether you invest or not. So do you want to get in the game and try and make it better, or you just want to watch it continue to expand? Because what leads to deforestation is poverty, weak governance around forestry, and a crop where people make a better livelihood than migrating and working in the city. So we can invest in the intensification or the sustainable intensification of cassava and raise yields. But until we also have the forestry investment in Laos and working on governance on the other side, that we will continue to see, a new road comes through, we get an investment for a new bridge from ADB, and all of a sudden the extensive margin pushes out. So it doesn't matter if it's cassava or maize or livestock feed. It's the environment that's causing the deforestation, not the crop. So let's work on the sustainable production of what's currently in existence, the land that's already been converted. But you can't think that if you raise productivity, then we'll meet global demand. No, global demand's there. We also need the investment in the institutional arrangements to manage forest encroachment. So you can't come at that. In terms of health, yes, there's many applications for maize, sweeteners. There's many applications for cassava, and some of those are more healthy than others. Some of the applications, the growing applications for cassava are actually in the health food sector because it's driven by the clean label market. So cassava starch, food processors get the functional properties they want without a chemical modification. So it's seen as a more natural ingredient for consumers. So it's the consumer demand for these natural products that is one of the reasons why cassava starch is becoming more popular. It's gluten-free, it's GM-free, and so it ticks a lot of those growing consumer trends in terms of health. Bubble tea, I've never actually had a bubble tea, but yeah, there's a lot of these health issues that we need to, in this forum I hear a lot, and I was expecting some question like this about applications for cassava, and I think it's across all crops that there's healthy applications and there's not healthy applications, and if you have one bubble tea a month, I'm sure it's not a problem, but it shouldn't be your everyday food on the way home from school for school kids.
Silly question. Okay, what makes TAT? TAT, for those who don't know, is Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation. It's an initiative by the African Development Bank. I remember when Akin Adesina, the president of African Development Bank, started this we had a meeting in Dakar, Senegal, brainstorming about different compact areas, what has better returns on investment. But thanks to Akin's passion, it came through. They invested not only on staple cereals like rice, wheat, maize, but also on sorghum, millets, cassava, livestock, even fish. All these are covered through those TAT compacts. I think one of the reasons for the success of the TAT compacts is they did not do just one aspect of value chain, right from input delivery, the production system, the processing players, and the final, marketing and market linkages. All those 4 areas are integrated or covered under each of the TAT Compact. So that's, and a lot of emphasis on climate resilience in each of the crops besides nutrition. So I think that's a very wise understanding and investment from Akin and team that Africa's agriculture cannot be transformed only through climate resilience, but also through stronger focus on nutrition. So these 2 aspects have been largely the reasons behind the success of TAT compacts.
Yeah, I'm not the expert on agriculture, but I guess from my what I learned, there must be different reasons. First of all, I guess the different varieties from another sort of breeding technologies would be accepted differently in different countries. For example, I worked in Myanmar before, and then Myanmar is a big rice cultivation country, and there are a lot of Chinese investments in rice cultivation in Myanmar as well. But the variety that the Chinese investment use are actually high yield varieties from China. It is very good productivity, but it's not very much accepted in the Myanmar market. So all these productions from the Chinese investment actually have to export back to China because the Myanmar market don't feel it's the same taste that they usually have on their rice. So I guess that will be part of the reasons, but maybe other reasons could be the sense of security and ownership on this genuine diversity and then their own genuine in their own country. In China, there are a lot of collaboration, but they tend to attend their own genuine in this area, while learning or borrowing from some of the other overseas technologies, but still the preference is to keep their own journey in the country. So that may be some of the cautious, but I do think that maybe starting from scientific collaborations could also be a good approach to start with.
So I think I'll come to this from 2-3 different perspectives, personal as well as professionally what we have seen. For example, now if you really see today, many of the Indian research centers, they are expected to provide the planting material also. If you really see many of these centers, they do that. And every time people say that, the capacity is not there to produce. So actually people are expecting the public sector to bring the private sector capacity to produce. They have the capacity to do research, but they do not have the capacity to do commercial production. That link is missing, and that link is missing from the value delivery also. Maybe there's not enough value delivery happening to the producers who can take it up. Okay, for example, a Bayer or Syngenta or somebody has a different commercial mechanism to do this. So that part we need to see as to how that can be done. Second issue for us is the traditional varieties, for example. Not enough work has been done on that to make sure that the royalty-free kind of production can happen through community. And very good example which you gave for Nepal. I mean, some of those things have to be really seen as to how they can be mainstreamed and how the financing can come to that. So ultimately, it's about commercial production, whichever is the source. And if the source is going to deliver producer the money for it and the adopter to actually deliver value at the end of it, it will happen. So we need to set up those parts of the value system which are going beyond the CGIAR's research into the lab to line. I mean, 1,000 times been said, but it's not been implemented.
I was just going to say, I think in the past people have seen this as a global public good, that there was donors who were producing global public goods and ADB was doing scaling. I think we need to rethink the context for Asia, where there isn't the same donors who are funding the production of global public goods. Now, it's difficult for banks who are loaned to a country where what I'm producing is a regional public good. So how do you channel money into something that goes to all of ASEAN to pay for that? So you can do the delivery because you have a loan directly to one country, but how do we fund the thing that is underpinning the ASEAN regional public good? And that's something I'm happy to have a beer this afternoon and discuss with people.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Do you want to ask more questions? Okay. I think we need to close, but do you have any burning question? Okay. You need dinner. Okay. Thank you very much. I think partnership is, all about value chain. So those who know very well about, that partnership is important, work closely, across institutions, across individuals. And I'm looking forward to work together with you. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.